It is Saturday evening. It is February 14th, 2016. It's pushing close to midnight. This is a follow-up on a video I put out on Monday, I believe it was. It was entitled Imagine America. And apparently when I recorded the video, the microphone volumes were too low. Although they sounded fine to me, they just didn't record well when I downloaded the video and put it on YouTube and on Facebook. But needless to say, I'm retrying this. And the video was about the Federal Reserve, how the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Dunkin' Donuts. The Federal Reserve is actually a private banking consortium consisting of 13 banking families. And these families, in their infinite wisdom, have created a scheme to defraud the people by charging us interest on debt created out of thin air. And what I'm suggesting in my video, the video I put out, and this new one that I'm putting out now, is that we end the Federal Reserve. We put an end to it, and we take our bank back. We no longer allow a private banking consortium of 13 families, who are very special, of course. No longer are we going to allow them to charge us interest on money that they don't even possess. It's time to create a real Bank of America and use the interest that we generate when somebody borrows money, and we charge interest to borrow that money. We use the interest that they pay to fund our government. We do away with the IRS and the tax schemes that enslave us as a citizenry. We can do this. We can take the trillions of dollars that we spend on paying down interest payments. We use those interest payments to fund our government. We do away with property taxes and other taxes, which are a scheme to defraud. And we tell the 13 families that they're on their own. Take our bank back, as is prescribed by the Constitution. Ask yourself, this is something I ask myself too, is why didn't I learn this in school? Why was I always taught to believe that the Federal Reserve was a federal bank, that it belonged to the federal government? It doesn't. In fact, we can't even audit it. We have to ask permission to audit it. That's how private it is. And they pay dividends. They pay themselves quarterly dividends when they charge us interest on debt created out of thin air. It's amazing. We paid $402 billion in fiscal year 2015 just on interest payments because we're $19 trillion plus in debt. To these families, we paid it to them. I say pay it to us. Let's pay ourselves back first. Let's change government. Let's take government back. Turn over Citizens Disunited. Repeal that and the Federal Reserve. Let's clean our house. Let's get our house in order. Anyway, I'll sign it now. I'll pull up the words here shortly, and I look forward to putting up more videos. It's good to be back. I'll talk to you soon. And again, I hope you get something out of my videos. I really put them out so that people will become more aware. At least I offer you to think outside the box. So it's good being back. Take care of yourselves. Be blessed. Namaste, my friends. Eagle 1023 signing out. Okay, I'm back. It's Eagle 1023. I am now on the Screencast-O-Matic. And the title of this piece is Imagine. These are the words that I came up with last week. Let me go ahead and read this to you, and I'll offer some commentary as I go along. I've put this together to serve as a wake-up call for all of us. The information that I'm providing here is a reality check that, for far too long, has been hidden under the radar of most of our citizenry. It's true, most are unaware of this scheme, and I think that it is time to expose this important information to all who are willing to listen and learn. I'm asking that you open your thought processes to possibility and imagine a better world for us all. Consider this my thesis. The American people pay trillions of dollars in interest payments each year to support the blatant corruption of 13 banking families. Auto loans, could have said business loans, mortgage payments, student loans, credit card purchases, etc. ad nauseum. We pay interest on everything anytime we borrow money. That's right, anytime you generate credit and are charged interest, you pay these families and support the system they've created for you, a system of perpetual debt slavery. Fact is, a handful of Uber families profit off of the backs, labor, and ideas of each and every one of us. They have developed a scheme to defraud, aka the system, which allows these families to steal our energy legally, albeit unconstitutionally. Here's something to think about. We paid just over $200 billion in interest payments towards our national debt to these families in fiscal 2015 alone. The government website says $402 billion, and I'm more apt to believe that we paid more than $200 billion to these families. I'm willing to bet the $402 billion is correct. Check out the rest of the story here. This is the Wall Street Journal, okay? And they entitled the piece "The Rising Tide of Interest." And if you look at this, you'll see that we paid, according to this, in 2014, about 220, it looks like, $1 billion in interest. That's just because we borrowed money from these families. We pay them this just for the privilege of borrowing the money. And remember, this is debt that's created out of thin air. They don't actually hand you the money and say, "Here you go. Here's the money. Use it and spend it wisely." They just write it on a piece of paper. They just say, "Hey," they put it in a computer program and say, "Hey, we've just let you this money." They don't own it. They don't. It doesn't exist. There's no intrinsic value to it. It's debt that's created out of thin air. Anyway, and as you see, by 2025, we're looking at just under $800 billion just to borrow money. That's what we'll pay these families, these 13 families. And I suggest enough is enough. We start a real Bank of America, and this money that we would be paying these families should be paid to us. That's how I look at it. And another thing I wanted to point out here, this is what we spend on defense, the dark blue, and then this light blue is what we spend for the other appropriations. And I believe there are 12 other appropriations in government. That's what we spend. We spend less in the 12 other appropriations, which is all of the government programs, the social programs and all that. We spend more in defense every year than we do on those. And now look at how much money we're wasting on interest because government spends too much. And by the way, it doesn't prioritize its spending properly. It doesn't take into the interests of the people. It doesn't take into consideration the interests of the people. It's really all about the military-industrial complex, building weapons of mass destruction, and that's what the taxpayers are forced to support, as this blue line shows. It's not like they're helping the veterans, real heroes that come back. Now, they get screwed while we support the Halliburtons of the world and the Boeing and Lockheed and Grumman, Raytheon, and all these Uber companies, owned by the same banks, by the way. Imagine for a moment if we had the stones to end the not-so-federal at all Federal Reserve, a corrupt and blood-soaked private banking cabal which promotes perpetual war and debt slavery through a system built literally and figuratively from debt born magically out of thin air. Imagine if we had the courage to take back the People's Bank, our money, from this dark cabal as the Constitution clearly prescribes, and instead use the trillions in interest payments we would take in each year, currently leached by this cabal, to rebuild this once great nation, to build again instead of destroy as we are programmed to do by these sinister families and their media empire. They own the 6 media giants. Make no mistake about it. These businesses belong to them. They create the narrative, and you believe what they create. Whatever they tell you is your reality, and what I'm suggesting to you is nothing could be further from the truth. They're not very honest with you, and they certainly don't keep you informed. They like an ignorant society. They want you to remain dumb and numb. And this is always in the name of democracy and freedom, if you notice. We're always, destroying nations halfway around the globe in the name of democracy and freedom, when in actuality, all we're doing is we're providing them a way to pilfer these countries' resources. And we don't care how many we kill to do it in the name of democracy and freedom. I think if most Americans understood that, they would be opposed to it. They wouldn't want their tax money going to kill people halfway around the world in the interests of these big corporations. At least people with who are decent and have a heart. If only we had a form of true and honest representative government, aka a republic, as opposed to this cancerous fascist oligarchy who hire, as P.J. O'Rourke correctly coined back in the 80s, a parliament of whores. A greedy, unethical bunch, not even closely resembling representatives that are of, by, and for we the people. We've got to take that power back, by the way. It's up to us. Imagine a nation with no taxation, as there would be no need for any taxes. No more 3-letter agency intentionally created by this psychotic cabal determining how much to steal from the citizenry through fear and intimidation. Everyone in America would be much happier, well, except those 13 families, their relatives, and all who benefit from this insane system. Imagine if you make your last mortgage payment after 30 years of sacrifice, and your property actually belonged to you. No property tax means that no government official can come and steal your home or land from you due to some unforeseen financial circumstance, leaving you unable to pay the banker-owned corporation of government. In 2008, when these banks intentionally stole trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars from hardworking Americans, they weren't stopped. They weren't held accountable. The people that suffered were the American people. And then they destroy these companies, and then they create higher unemployment rates. People can't afford to pay their bills because they're being screwed. And then these people come in and steal what little bit they have left. It's immoral, it's unethical, it's wrong, it's un-American. It needs to stop. No more county or state taxes, no federal taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, excise fees, franchise fees, sin taxes, gas taxes, taxes that go on and on and on, and all that outright theft for these 13 families and their minions reduced to a bad, tragic memory, a lapse in our collective judgment, which has certainly cost us dearly. Think of how many families, let alone individuals, have suffered as a result of this rigged game. Think it was by accident that they were setting it up this way? As I mentioned earlier, the property taxes were set up just so they could steal your property if you couldn't afford to pay the tax man. It's all intentional. None of this is by accident. Think again, Think being very, very important here. Nothing within the system happens by accident. It's called the system for a reason, and yes, the game has always been rigged. It's always been rigged. Yep, if only we had the courage to do what was right as a people instead of being successfully divided and conquered by these families, the ruling class and their dark minions who create the narrative presented through all of their controlled media programming. If only we had the collective consciousness to evolve into something better. If only we knew how to reset our priorities. I guess what saddens me most about all of this is that I can only ask you to imagine. I think about last Sunday when I came up with this, and 120 million plus people were watching the Super Bowl and all the commercials, the ads, the programming, the halftime celebration, the programming, all this programming. The good guys versus the bad guys. One team's got to win, the other one has to lose, us versus them. It's all programming. I'm thinking, imagine if 120 million Americans actually came together for something beyond something sports related, or the Olympics or some basketball game, and they actually cared about something that mattered to their everyday lives. These ruling elites and their minions have us divided and conquered. While you're worried about the other poor people who can't afford to live a decent life, you blame them for your problems. These bankers are stealing trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars from you. They're the real enemy here. You're focusing your energy at the wrong people because you've been programmed to focus your energy at them. They've got us divided and conquered, folks. And while you're angry at the welfare queen down the street and blaming them or the Mexicans for crossing the border who are only trying to survive, they're just trying to survive. Borders created with imaginary lines to separate us and divide us. These bankers are reaching behind you and they're grabbing your wallet and they're stealing every little bit that you have. Middle class is shrinking for a reason, and it's not because of Mexican labor. It's because the system is rigged. They're shipping your jobs overseas. They're screwing you, and they pray that you remain lost in the matrix. They pray that you keep blaming somebody else for what they're doing because they own you. And I can promise you this, we'll never solve the many problems that we face by blaming somebody else who is no more responsible than you are. The fact is that people that are easily divided and conquered are the real problem. You're not focusing your attention where it belongs. You've been programmed. You need to deprogram and get with the program. You need to know what the hell's going on. We're not going to come together unless everybody recognizes this. And I know it's hard to change long-held beliefs, and it's hard to say, "Oh my God, I've been played a fool." It's hard for people to admit to that, but that's what it's going to take. So, anyway, that's what I put together. There are so many subjects that if people only knew the truth, or at least understood things from a different perspective, something outside of what they've been programmed to believe, we could make a big difference. The idea that the Federal Reserve is federal is a lie. It is a private banking consortium. And no matter how much you want to believe it's federal and that you have some say, that doesn't change the fact that you don't have any say and it isn't federal. It's a private bank. It's a consortium of people who pay themselves dividends, as I said earlier. And this has got to stop. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take our power back. We need to regain our energy. And we can create a better America. We can create a better future. We are not exceptional when it comes to the world stage. We're exceptional at oligarchy. We are exceptional at creating the biggest prison industrial complex in the world and incarcerating more of our citizens than any other country. We are exceptional at running the largest debts ever held by man on the planet. We are exceptional at developing weapons of mass destruction that we use in countries halfway around the globe. That we are exceptional. The world is disappointed in us, and for very good reason. We should really reflect on where we're at and what we're doing. We should take a good hard look at ourselves and say, why are we in this state? Why do people have to die of cancer because they can't afford to survive? And who gave any family or any group of people that kind of power over other people's lives? And these are the same people that claim to value life, which is a joke. It's not true. If you value life, you value life. Anyway, it's just so much to think about, and I really appreciate you if you're still with me here, listening to what I have to say. We can do this. That interest that we're charged should go to fund our government to take care of us. We should do away with the tax system. It's a scheme to defraud. Anyway, it's Eagle 1023. I will sign out here, and I'm going to put more videos together. And again, my intent is never to offend people. I know everyone has an opinion, and opinions will vary. But I ask you to research this. Look into the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Check out Glass-Steagall. Why was Glass-Steagall passed in 1931? It's because of the excesses of these families. They lied to us. They robbed us blind, and they have been. The next great theft is already planned, folks. If you've got money invested in 401ks or the stock market, you just need to prepare yourself for that, for losing that. They're going to steal it from you. You need to know that. It is going to happen whether you like it or not. And I say, don't shoot the messenger. Take the advice and run with it. Do something about it. It's not easy. Anyway, I love you all, and I hope to put out a video again soon. It'll be a different subject matter, something that may pique your interest a little more. But we can do this. We need to end the Federal Reserve. We need to call for a constitutional convention. So I'll talk to you soon. I'll end it here. Okay. Thank you for your time, and please be blessed. Love one another. Okay. It's Eagle 1023. I'm signing out. Namaste.